Hello and welcome everyone to episode 6 of the Churnersd Digest. So first off, I'm going to quickly say this isn't churning related. So if you're here just to hear about churning, you can tune out now. This is going to be a topic episode that I promised back in episode 3, which is an apartment rant. I previously lived in an apartment complex that I did not enjoy. It made me dread where I lived, so I want to shed some information on that. But I will have a new Churnersd Digest episode coming out soon, where I'll be talking about 3 new credit card applications that I applied for, some data points on them. Not super interesting credit card applications. I think I have a problem and just want new credit images, like to add to my never-ending collection of Apple Wallet credit card image rips. So I opened 3 more that I didn't previously have. Discuss if that's an issue in next episode. I also have some bank turning updates, some gift card purchases I made, and more. Thanks, Kleed, who's in the Simple Finance Discord, for the motivation for making this episode. I sometimes have a difficult time getting motivated. Maybe I'll have a topic about this in an episode in the future, but I sometimes feel like it's a chore to make these. I do enjoy them, but it takes a lot of effort for me to sit down, write down all my thoughts, and sit down and record this and find time. So for those of you that do reach out and tell me that you enjoy watching or listening to my podcasts, it means a lot. It's what kind of keeps me motivated to do these things. So any feedback is always appreciated. Before we get into the apartment rant, just some quick housekeeping stuff. Last week on my Curve and Bank of America online shopping category, was that a topic episode? Yeah, the topic episode. I had mentioned that the Bank of America customized cash business card was an option for my workflow, but I had someone reach out to me. Let me get who they actually were. I should have pulled this up prior. Give me 1 second as I stall and open in my other tab the email. It was from someone named Karen, so listener Karen, that reached out and said, hey, I noticed that you mentioned the Bank of America business version of the customized cash rewards, but that has different categories. Does it still work? So shout out to Karen. Thank you for reaching out to me and letting me know. I incorrectly just assumed that the business card would have the same categories. They do not. They have office supplies and I think maybe service payments or something. So that doesn't work. Only the personal card will work for that. I did put a disclaimer in the previous podcast description. I'm not going to re-record the podcast. I can't really edit it now that it's up, but figured I'd say it here. Also, some other housekeeping things. I want to say disclaimer before this episode starts. I'm intentionally trying to not disclose the apartment company in full. Please don't try to find this apartment complex. If you do, I don't condone sending them any hate or messages. Please don't reach out to them. I plan on leaving a public review to let other people know. I'll put it on maybe their Google Maps listing or some other apartment website review sites. This is not intended to be a witch hunt, so please do not send any hate to this company. This is just for me to get off my chest and rant and maybe hopefully have some entertaining content for y'all to listen to for, I don't know how long this is going to be. But please don't reach out to them. Please don't try and find out who they are. I just wanted to say that first and foremost. So without further ado, let's dive into this. So I broke this up into a couple sections. First, I'm going to give some backstory and design of the building so you get some kind of context. Then I'm going to talk about some issues I had with my specific unit. There'll be some pictures as well. I can't put them in the podcast description, but they'll be on the companion post on fearthez.wordpress.com. I need to get my full domain to just fearthez.com. But right now it's still fearthez.wordpress.com. And the Simple Finance's blog, which I think is simplefinance.net/fearthez. Links will be in the show notes as well. So after specific unit issues, I'll talk about package issues, which was a pretty big concern I had. And then just some general issues I had with the building as a whole. And then if I think of anything as I go along, I might go on a side tangent. Also, this is kind of rambly. I do have notes, I have a full page and a half of notes that I wrote, but I can get into tangents and I can go off and I can get a little heated. So apologies, but if you're into that, strap in. We're in for a ride. So backstory here, to set the scene. I was looking to move. I was living home during COVID, and I wanted my own place. Obviously, the work that I'm at was full remote at the time, and I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna move near my friends, near where I went to school. So I was looking in the area. Again, not going to say the area, but it was a high cost of living area. It's one of the top highest rents in the United States, like top 20. I was looking for a larger sized apartment, maybe around like 1,000 square feet, specifically because I wanted a place that would have an office. Since I was going to work from home for so often, I wanted to have a sort of secondary space that could be unique just for working. This apartment that I wound up moving into was by far the cheapest. It was really far from the city that I would be working in if I had to go into office, but it wasn't a train line. And most places I was looking at were like $2,200 a month more. And I'm looking for a single, no roommates, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. This wound up being a loft, which kind of turned into, this will be a rant topic as well for coming up here, but yeah, it was a loft unit. So like I lived on the first floor, like with living area, and then second floor is the bedroom. First floor has a kitchen and stuff. It wound up being, after some discounts, it's a 14-month lease, was $1,842 a month, which was by far way lower than anything else I saw. It doesn't include electric, which we'll get into later, and there's no gas, so that's for electricity, heat, and cooking. And I wound up cooking almost all my meals thanks to the meal kits. This is in an old mill building, so they converted this really old brick building that just had a bunch of, used to be a mill building, used to produce, manufacturing for something that they now converted to apartments. Basically, they just, the mill building was very exposed, had these exposed wooden beams in the center, and it was just open floor plan. They just essentially slapped up really cheap, in my opinion, drywall and cookie cutter all these places out. The building was split up into 3 sections, so there was like to the left, in the middle, and then to the right. There were 3 sections. The ones that were built first were, I believe, on the far left, and they were a little bit different. They weren't cookie cutter, so in my section, you could, when you step out of my front door, if you look down, it kind of looks like straight out of The Shining, where it's just like this long hallway that never ends. But then in the original section, the first section that they built, it kind of like the hallway snaked because each apartment unit was built uniquely. I think that they originally were building it that way and realized it took too long, and they wanted to just quickly spit out these apartments. So in my section, and then the section next to me that was newer, they just put up what I like to call pencil apartments. So it's like super narrow, but you get 2 floors, so it's not as bad. But like the width of it, 12 feet. Some of them are really tiny, and I'm shocked people live there. I lived in a larger one. Mine was just about 1,000 square foot. I think it was just over 1,000 square foot. So it was a little bit wider in the living area, but like the hallway you walked into, the ceilings were, you could touch the ceiling, which was above me was my loft. And super narrow when you walked in, then you walk down into the kitchen, the living space. So like a lot of that square footage was eaten by that long hallway corridor that I walk into when I first go in. But yeah, it was split up into 3 sections. When I first joined, it was all under one management. When I first become a tenant at the apartment, it was all one management. And then after a few months, they went under some like reorganization. They split up the sections. So the section I lived in had my specific front desk, my specific package room. We'll get into package room issues later. But with that came some annoyances where like I had access to the rooftop when I first joined, and then because of the reorganization, the rooftop was now in a different section. And now that it was in a different section, they're trying to say that I don't have access to it anymore. And when I asked the front desk, that's what they told me. But my key card did still work there, so I did get to go up there. But technically, they revoked the access after I had already become a resident. I read through my lease agreement. It never mentioned that I had access to the rooftop. It just said that if there is one, I can't leave things there. So I guess it's within the right to do that, but that just kind of irked me the wrong way. So talking about the layout of the design a little bit of the building, it's just like this, you your exterior walls just exposed brick, hardwood floors, modern appliances. The building was just built, like it was vacant a couple years prior. And talking to some locals in the area, they told me that the building actually, the windows were like shattered. It was in a bad state. So, and the area is not great either. So it was probably a huge benefit to the area, and probably the governor, the state was probably involved in it. I know that he came and had a ceremony when things opened up. So I think that there were a lot of tie-ins with like doing this in a good area. They probably got a lot of tax benefits from it because it's in a lower income area, and they're trying to basically gentrify it and make these very nice apartments. And back on the drywall that I mentioned, they put up to like cookie cutter these apartments. They felt so thin, like, I don't know, maybe 4 inches thick, like the whole wall. And that's the only thing that separates my apartment from the next person's apartment. And it felt like I could push hard enough and just break through the drywall, like with my thumb. So super cheap, very poorly made, which led into some of the issues that we'll talk about later. Okay, so that's about it for the building and design section. So I'm going to go into specific units I had with my issue. So first off, I didn't think of this when I first moved in, but after a couple months I noticed I didn't want a studio when I was first looking for an apartment. I specifically wanted a 1-bedroom, so my living space and my kitchen space and my cooking space could be secluded. The way that this is laid out is my loft overlooks my kitchen and my living space. What I didn't fail to notice at the time, but once I was living there for long enough, determined that it's basically a studio. There's no door that I can shut that'll have like basically separate air from my kitchen or my living room. Or if I have guests over and someone's sleeping in my living room, the loft is just exposed. Like I can look down and see them there. So you don't have like your own private area. What I didn't like about this was, since I cooked a lot, my whole apartment, including my bedroom, would smell like what I cooked. And when I first was looking for apartments, I specifically was thinking, I don't want a studio because I don't want my kitchen to be in my bedroom so I can smell what I cook. Wound up having to do that anyway. Another thing about that, and I didn't write down, that's now going in a tangent that hopefully I remember, was that since my building was a loft, and since my loft is my bedroom and overlooks my living space, the living space has the exterior window, and we'll talk about the windows in a little bit, but I am someone, I've learned from living there for 14 plus months, that I like to have a window next to me. I like to have fresh airflow, especially in an old mill building. The building's old, the air is old, and I like to have fresh air. And me being so far from the window being in the living room then has the kitchen next to it, and then it's my loft, and I'm on the second floor. So not only does heat rise, but I'm so far away from the window that I don't have fresh air. It's just a horrible layout. It's super stuffy. In the thermostat's on the first floor, so if I set the thermostat to something, like I would always leave it at 76 because we'll get into later, but the electricity is really expensive there. But if I wanted to set it to like something cooler, the heat would rise, and the temperature, the thermostat on the first floor would register cooler than it was upstairs because the air would just be stiff. And it's forced air, so it's just forced air being pushed around. So the bedroom would always be hot, and downstairs would always be cooler, and it was just miserable to sleep in. There's no windows. It just sucked. Also, when I was first moving in, I'm going to be saying also not going to have a lot of transitions or nice flows in this, so apologies. But when I first went to move in, they couldn't show me my specific unit. They said someone was living there. You can't show it to me. That makes sense. What I failed to know at the time was that a lot of these units are very unique. They don't all follow one floor plan. So when they gave me the floor plan, it's just a generic floor plan for my type of unit, which is a 1-bedroom that's the larger size. There was a smaller one that's those pencil units I was talking about. They're super narrow, and mine started off as that super narrow, but then opened up at the end. I don't think I might have a picture of a floor plan. I don't know if I want to post it though, because that'll really, if you know the apartment complex, you'll know what apartment complex it is, but maybe I'll post it. But you can see that these are super narrow. Mine was narrow and then opened up at the end. So when I signed, they just showed me a generic floor plan for my type of unit. And when I went and viewed, they showed me a showroom. And that showroom had 2 closets, one on the first floor, one on the second floor. And I just assumed, like the idiot I am, that mine would also have that. when I got the floor plan and I got my square footage was a little bit lower than the floor plan. So I messaged them and I was like, hey, like, what's this about? Why is my square footage different? They were like, oh, each unit's different. You might have some smaller area in the entranceway. There's this little cutout. Maybe yours is smaller. And I was like, all right, fair. That makes sense. They all aren't the same. It's not a mill building. It'll be unique. Turns out I just don't have the second closet on the second floor, which I wanted. I have a lot of clothes. I need the closet space. So I went complaining. They're like, oh, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. You didn't sign this particular floor plan. You just signed this type of floor plan, and yours doesn't have one. Sucks to suck. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll deal with it. It's super annoying. I'll just shove everything in my one closet. It was super crowded. I hated it. So that already rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't like the leasing department. Not to mention, as I said earlier, the leasing department changed. I then got transferred to a different area, different folks that were managing it. I never really talked to them, but it's just, there were so many moving parts. I'll mention it later, but the staff was always coming in and out. People seemed to always be leaving all the time. I'd have contact to one person's email, and then they wouldn't be working here anymore. I'd need to contact another person. It was kind of miserable. So I did have a sort of closet on the second floor, but that contained my in-unit washer dryer, which I required to have an in-unit washer dryer as one of my requirements when I was looking for a place. But I didn't really notice this when I first moved in, but the washer and dryer were the smallest things I've ever seen in my life. I'll try and get a link to the washer and dryer actual units, but if I put my hand, I have pretty big hands. If I put my hand in the hole of the washer, it's the diameter of my hand. It was very small. I'd have to do multiple loads to do it. They were a Miele unit, and I think that they were not put on a higher voltage outlet. I think it was just a standard outlet, and they took forever to dry. So I just wound up stop using the dryer. Also because my energy bill was so expensive, I stopped using the dryer. I just wound up hang drying everything. It's very disappointing. My new apartment has normal sized washer and dryer, and they work great. And it's a luxury I didn't realize I would enjoy so much and would need. I mentioned the windows a little bit earlier. I'm on the top floor, and this is an old mill building. The windows don't have screens. They also only open 3 inches. And I get it for liability. I want someone jumping out of the window, but 3 inches with only having 4 windows and no screen is really bad. So I had the genius idea of, let me just go to Home Depot and buy a screen and shove it in the window. I learned that you can remove these little tabs that stop the window from only being able to open a certain amount. It's just these plastic tabs, and I take them out, and you can open the window all the way. And that way, I can fit a screen in the window. Put the screen in, open it up, shut the window on the screen. I now have a screen to fully open window. Wonderful. After a couple weeks, there was an email sent out to the entire apartment complex with my window circled saying, whoever has this screen with the window all the way open, you must remove it or you're going to face fines. I thought it was ridiculous. I'm obviously not jumping out of the window. I get that they want to have the window shut. I understand that. It might be a liability. It might be a fire risk, but you need to have screens in your windows. The building is on a river. It's riverfront. It's on a river. And that river obviously has bugs. And with no screen and having the window open, the bugs come in. I would always have bugs in my apartment. Always have fruit flies. I'm a clean person. I never leave spoiled food out. But as I said, we live on a river and there's no screen, so bugs are going to come in. I always had bug problems. I could not leave my windows open at night during the summer because my walls around my light fixtures would have little gnats and fruit flies all over the walls, and they would never leave, and it was miserable. Next, we had some issues with I had some issues with my sink and garbage disposal in the kitchen was leaking. I also noticed that the disposal was filthy when I moved in. I did like the TikTok viral thing of like putting ice in there and some vinegar and some baking soda, but it still didn't smell good. I think that was also a source of some of the fruit flies. I tried cleaning it. Can't really clean that super well. That was just another annoyance. The building is facing north to south. Like the large facade of the building faces north and south, and I lived in the south side, which is not the side of the river. And because of that, and because of where the place is geographically located, I was always facing the sun, which meant my exposed brick was always hot. It could be the winter, it'd be hot. It could be the summer, it's baking. So I constantly had to have my air conditioning running. Like I said, I kept my air conditioning at 76 degrees because it was expensive. Speaking of that, my electricity in this apartment, again, mind you, left the air conditioning at 76 degrees, didn't use my washing machine. It was $200 to $300 a month. I don't know if you know how much electricity costs, but my cost per kilowatt was 0.33 cents per kilowatt, which is very high. It fluctuated all the time. Sometimes it was down at like the 15 cents, but sometimes it hiked up to the 33. So I'd use 300 to 400 kilowatts a month, and that would cost me $200 to $300, which is ridiculous. I never used the dryer. I only used the washer. I used my dishwasher, and I cooked. And I set my air conditioning at 75 degrees, 76 degrees. So no matter what I would do, it just cost me a lot of money to live there, on top of the apartment rent fees, which were lower, but it started pushing the number up there to comparable to other places. In addition, I lived on the top floor. I think I said this before. So this used to be a mill building. So the center of the building, this is hard to explain, but the center of the building has a taller ceiling than the sides of the building. And because the buildings are like pencils and they meet in the center, part of my unit has this higher ceiling and part of it has the lower ceiling because there's this bump up in the center of the building. This wouldn't be a problem on the lower floors because they don't have this bump up. But since I'm on the top floor, I have this bump up. What they decided to do was to put a false ceiling that matched the closer to the edge of the building ceiling. So there's the edge of the building. They installed a ceiling that matched that. So then above that section that they installed, there's this just area. There's like, I don't know, 7-8 feet above that ceiling. And I think because of that, it either caused an echo chamber or I don't know, but there were gaps in it. It wasn't fully sealed properly. I could see out and see daylight above my ceiling. And these ceilings were so old, the ones that were installed, not the new one ceilings, but there would constantly be debris falling from the ceiling. So like maybe once a month, once every other month, there would be like a dusting in certain areas of my apartment where the ceiling had dust fall from it. And I'm genuinely concerned. I don't know what this dust is. This building's so old. In my lease agreement, there's clauses that there was lead paint. So I'm concerned, like, what the hell's falling from my ceiling? So I spoke to the front desk, who were like, oh, it's probably from the building shaking due to wind, which I get it. We're living on the water, and there's not really much the apartment complex could do. But he was like, file a work order, and someone will come. Filed the work order. It was closed without comment. No one came. Which is very disappointing. I'm not going to sit here and fight again. I already went to the front desk and asked, and they just told me to file a work order, and I did what they told me, and nothing came of it. And I was like, screw it. I'll just deal with this. I'm not going to live here forever. I'm paying cheap, fine, whatever. I'll just put up with it. Also, due to as I mentioned before, the drop ceiling, the people would walk on top of either my ceiling, which is the real exterior ceiling, or my false ceiling, and I would hear footsteps all the time, like losing my mind. I'm like, where are these people walking on my roof? What are they doing? What are they outside walking around? It's very frustrating. And like I said, it causes an echo chamber. Because I think because of that drop ceiling above me, where it's the false ceiling and there's a gap, and there were holes in my ceiling where they didn't properly seal or they didn't do a good job of putting the wood planks in. It's just wooden planks side by side, and they didn't fill the gaps. So sound from my neighbor would channel up through that gap, come over to that exposed area, and come down, and I could hear things. We'll get into that again later. And since this building's so old, it kind of had like a musty smell to it, and I think my couch still smells like it, and I'm genuinely considering getting rid of the couch because I'm sitting there and I'm like smelling my old apartment, which is not something I want to be doing. And I'll have a picture of some of the debris that fell off. Looking back at this, I can't believe I didn't freak out more. Like, this is absolutely disgusting. It can't be in the show notes. Maybe I'll put an Imgur link, but it's absolutely disgusting. So that's the section on my unit's specific issues. Next, I'm going to talk about package issues, and this was pretty annoying. So the package room, it's one package room from my section of units. There were multiple floors, and probably, I don't know, there's got to be hundreds of units in these sections. And they had one small package room where they would try and divide it up by floor. And they started off with these shelves, and they said, like, floor 1 through whatever. They were never organized. They were never put on the proper shelves. And there would be so many packages that the floor sections would be overflowing. So they created a secondary, in the same room, a secondary section for the packages. And that would now start overflowing. People either wouldn't come and get their stuff, or the area was just too small for the amount of numbers that they had. And the people that worked at the apartment complex did not do a good job of organizing. I'd always go there. Things wouldn't be placed on the proper floors. I'm talking about hundreds of packages in this room that I have to personally go through and look and see if mine's there, because they wouldn't put it in the proper section. The delivery person wouldn't put it on the proper floor section, and the people that worked there wouldn't come in and organize it. So I'm sitting there genuinely for over 5-10 minutes looking for my package. One time, I wouldn't mention this. Like, you may just be like, oh, you're being ridiculous. Like, just look for your package, whatever. I had my Pixel 7 Pro ordered and delivered to my apartment complex. Package said it was delivered. I went, nowhere to be found. I'm like, all right, maybe it'll show up. Maybe someone will come and get some stuff. Maybe someone accidentally took it. I go back. Next day, still not there. I go to the front desk. I'm like, hey, I had my phone delivered. I'm a little worried. I can't remember if it needed a signature or not. I can't remember. I want to say it did, but I can't remember. I think it did, because I was convinced that someone had taken my package. And I'm like, someone just stole my package. I went to the front desk. They're like, if we got it, it's in the package room. And I'm like, all right, fine. I guess it's not here. I contacted Google, got them to ship me a brand new phone. The phone gets delivered. I go to the front desk. I take it, and they're like, oh, by the way, this package has been here for a week. It's the old phone that they told me they didn't have. I had already gone back the week prior and been, hey, can't find my package. Do you know where this is? We don't have it. If we have it, it's in the room. Go a week later. Oh, we had this package a week ago, just sitting here behind the front desk. What? I just asked you a week ago where the package was, and you told me you didn't have it. And now I'm asking you, and you're like, oh, we've had it for a week. So now I have to go contact Google, tell them, hey, the original phone you shipped me did come to me, and now I have this replacement phone. How do you want me to mail it back? Ridiculous. That constantly, every week, I'd be looking for packages. I would dread coming home and walking past the package location and be like, oh my God, I got to look for this package. It just spent me 5-10 minutes of my life looking for the package. That really irritated me. I'm so glad I'm not there anymore. I would dread having items shipped there. Okay. Next are building issues as a whole. Once a month, monthly, maybe once every other month, maybe once a month, there'd be a fire alarm that would go through the entire building that's so loud and would blare at 3 a.m. in the morning, 4 in the morning, 2 in the morning, midnight, 11. Sometimes people are cooking pasta and forget that it's on and fall asleep, and then would cause a fire, and then police would come. That's what the fire department said. They're like, don't fall asleep while you're cooking pasta, because that's what people are doing. And multiple times throughout the night, I'd wake up. It'd ruin my night. I'd wake up and have to go walk outside the apartment for 20 minutes and wait for the fire department to come and give us the all clear. Some people would just sleep through it, but it's so loud. The alarm's right next to my head. It's like built into the wall. It's like a speaker. It'd say, if you're receiving this alert, your floor alarm has sounded. You must exit the building. So I'd have to walk down all my flights of stairs, go outside, walk around the building, wait to get back in when they let me, and go back to sleep. Next, as I mentioned, there's 3 sections of the building. I lived in the middle one, and I would often walk across the section so I wouldn't have to. When I get off the train, I'd walk into like the section to my left. I could buzz into that door, then I could walk through the apartment center, just like a hotel, and walk down to my section, take the elevator up. Also, side note, the elevator that I used was so bad, I would genuinely wait minutes for it to show up. It would take me less time to walk up 10 to 15 flights of stairs to get to my apartment than I would sit there waiting for the elevator. It was so bad. There would also be dog piss in there, and it was horrible. The elevators were terrible. But as I'm saying, I'll walk into my apartment that I'm allowed to buzz into with my buzz card, and then walk through the center down to my section. Towards the end of me living there, they put doors up in between the sections that you cannot get through. So I can buzz in with my buzzer to the other sections
apartment complex, other sections complex, other sections, oh my God, other sections door. If I went in those areas, that's technically not my apartment anymore. It's all the same building, all attached. They put up walls in the center and put up unopenable doors, not buzzable. You can't buzz it. You can walk from my apartment section to the left into the other section and get out. It's a push door. They let you push it open. But if you try and come from left to right, the door will not open. There's no buzzer. You cannot get through. Absolutely ridiculous. So if it's raining or if it's snowing and I want to enter in where I'm allowed to enter in with my buzzer through the front door of the section to my left, I then walk to the right to go towards my apartment. That door is locked. I cannot get to my section. I have to leave the entire building, come out of my building, and buzz in. I can go from my apartment, push through the door that they let me push through. Then once that door shuts, cannot get back unless I go to the first floor, leave the building, and come back in. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's no reason to do that. Why are you letting me buzz in if I'm not allowed in there? The building is one building. There's no brick wall dividing. They put up drywall with a door. Used to be open for 10 plus months. Then they installed this door, and it's ridiculous. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting a little heated here. Let's see. Yeah, I covered that. There was a door that goes into my section that did have a buzzer. So some of them have buzzers, some of them don't. The one that had a buzzer that into my section that I'm allowed in, that I live in, my buzzer didn't work. Never complain about it. I'm just like, screw it. I don't care. Not worth the effort. Parking notices. So they had apartments. They have a parking garage there. They would send me a notice with 48 hours notice saying, hey, you have to relocate your vehicle. You're getting towed. Sometimes I go home to visit my family. I'm gone for a week at a time. If you give me 48 hours notice and I'm not there, what am I supposed to do? I had to get a friend come and move my car for me. Luckily, I had a spare in my bedroom, in my room, so I had to send him to the apartment complex. They had to let him into my unit to grab my keys to move my car. 48 hours? Or else you're going to tow my car? Are you kidding me? What if people aren't around? What if they're on vacation? Back on the walls issue and the reverberation and the drop ceiling, the walls were so thin, I could hear my neighbors baby crying. I can hear them having arguments with their significant other. I can hear them yelling at their dog to get off the couch. I can hear reggaeton music at 3 a.m. blasting the radio. I can hear them having intimate time because the bedrooms, they're all in the loft, so it's through this thin piece of drywall. I can hear them going at it in the room next to me at 3 a.m, waking me up. It's ridiculous. One point, the neighbor's alarm was going off for hours, like he was sleeping through it. I started banging on the wall to wake him up, and I hear him wake up, and he goes, what the? He's like upset that he overslept his alarm. I could hear all this. It's ridiculous. For the amount of money I'm paying, almost $2,000 a month, and I can hear my neighbor banging? Come on. Ridiculous. And I talked to other people that live in the apartment too. And they're like, can you believe this place? You can hear your neighbor getting it on in the room over. Like, yeah, it's like I have a roommate that I don't pay for. I'm paying the price to live alone, and I have a roommate that I can hear. Oh, man. I mentioned this before, due to the wall being a loft. I think that in the living room, it's just open. The ceiling is maybe 20 feet tall. I can't put anything on the walls. It's just drywall. And I think because of that, there's nothing to eat up the reverberation of the sound, and it just becomes an echo chamber. And that's kind of what helps the sound being so loud. I mean, hearing my neighbor's baby crying at all times of the day. Terrible design decisions. There was a section of the building, not my section, that had a leaky ceiling in the hallway, like bad, like multiple drips per second coming down, and like the paint was like having a bubble behind it from the water. It was bad. That section has people living in it. That section has people daily walking through it. They have to know about it, and they're just leaving it. I had a sketchy neighbor. I mentioned that the dog, I can hear the neighbor yelling at the dog to get off the couch. One day, no more dog. Dog stopped. I didn't hear the dog. Didn't hear the guy yelling at the dog. I don't know what happened to the dog. That guy was sketchy. Didn't work. He's always home. One day there was this sound. It sounded like a rowing machine. You know when you're at like the gym and you sit and you row and it's like vroom, like a drum spinning? It would do that, but it definitely wasn't a rowing machine because it wasn't sustained. It would just happen once. It'd be like one pull and then it would stop for a couple minutes, and then it would be another pull. If anyone has any idea what kind of machine that could be, what kind of apparatus, I cannot imagine what it was, but it was the most annoying noise. It would happen every couple of minutes. It would be like, vroom, and then it would slowly slow down the drum. I have no idea what it was. To this day, I don't know. I did not talk to the guy. He was sketchy. If you know what it is, please, I'm so curious. Please let me know. Churnersd Digest at gmail.com. Message me on Discord. Message me on Reddit. Fear the Z. Well, Reddit's RIP. I'm not going to use it after tomorrow because the third-party apps, whatever. But if you know what that is, I need to know what it is. I lived in a bad area. That's actually the next section here. I lived in a bad area. Like, within me moving in, there's a park that's half a mile from me that I can see from my apartment. People play baseball there all the time. Someone was shot dead there within a month of me moving in. There's people experiencing homelessness. That's apparently what you're supposed to say now, on both intersections at the edges of my apartment complex. Like, it's a bad area. I don't know what the neighbor's doing. Maybe that sound is some kind of drug paraphernalia. I have no idea. My bathroom drain would constantly clog. I'd have to call maintenance to come and unclog it. They were very nice, actually. Maybe they didn't do a good job because it would constantly plug, but the guy was very nice. They'd come like the next day, except for when I reported the ceiling leaking with dust. But they were very nice. What else? Those intersections that I'm mentioning that had the guy experience homelessness on it, very backed up with traffic. I'd never go out the one exit because making a left there, I'd have to get into the right lane because the left lane was a left turn only lane, so I'd have to cross over 2 lanes, and it was right next to a bridge, so the line would go back to the bridge, and they'd never let you in. Miserable driving situation. Cars would drive down our street with super loud mufflers through all day and all night, flooring it. There'd be like bike gangs that would come by. People would drive on their quads on the street. It was mayhem. As I mentioned before, the turnover of the staff was ridiculously high. People would come in and out. I'm so glad I'm not living in that place anymore. But I think that's everything I wanted to cover. I don't know if this was interesting. I've been rambling for 40 minutes. Don't live there. I hated it. I like my apartment much better now. I live in a duplex. I live on the second and third and fourth floor of a duplex. The landlord lives in the first and the second. It's a nice older building. Things are actually built well. They're not cheap drywall. They put up as quick as possible. Like the edges of the drywall that met the... So they're installing this drywall. This will be the last thing, and then this episode has to end. They're installing this drywall against brick. The brick's old brick. It's not uniform, so it juts out a bunch. So they put up the drywall. They didn't cut the drywall. They just put up the drywall as close as they can, and then they just like filled it with caulk. But like the only thing that's separating my apartment and the other person's apartment is a thin layer of caulk, and then the caulk would be exposed, like would have holes in it, so you could get into the drywall. People complain about rats all the time and mice because the drywall and the caulk wasn't fully flush, and there was gaps. And like I said, with the window, I don't know if I mentioned this, but the window was built into the wall, and there'd be brick attaching to it, and then some of the bricks started falling out like little chunks, so there'd be genuinely a gap to the outside next to my window, in between my window and the brick wall. Hindsight, I should have noticed these things. It was my first time renting a real apartment by myself. These are all horribly red flags. I hated that apartment complex. The people that lived there, I did not enjoy living there with. The neighbors were terrible, crying baby, possible a rowing machine apparatus at all hours of the night, blasting radio reggaeton music at 3 a.m. Oh, I'm so glad not to be living there. I would genuinely despise coming home at night. Like if I went out, I'd be like, I'm not going to be able to sleep because my neighbor. I'm not someone who's confrontational. I'm not going to go over there and complain about the sound. That's on me. I'll take that, but I shouldn't have to do that. The walls shouldn't be so thin that I can hear them. Like, what am I going to do? Tell them to stop having sex next to me? Like, that's not something I complain about. What am I going to... That's it. This has been a 40-minute rant. If you're interested in churning stuff, I'm really sorry. If you've really gotten this far, congratulations. You've listened to me rant for more than anyone should for 40 minutes. I want to record another episode, possibly today. Maybe I'll put 2 out today. One of this topic episode of my apartment rant, one of like a more churning update. I'm going outdoor rock climbing here in a little bit, and I actually am supposed to leave now, so I'm probably going to be late. Yay. But I wanted to get this recorded. Thanks, Kleed, for the suggestion for doing this one next. Who knows if it was a good idea. I'm sorry for the rant. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.